I'm so thrilled that you're here today. And I'm Dr. Katie Egan Cunningham from Manhattanville College and the faculty advisor for Kappa Delta Pi. Thank you for giving your time on this Sunday morning, midday, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And this is a super thrilling event for Manhattanville's Kappa Delta Pi Honor Society chapter, because this is our first event really about global education with global change makers. So I'm delighted for us to get started too, to honor everybody's time. I just wanted to introduce our Kappa Delta Pi officers and our panelists before they really take over our time together. Our Kappa Delta Pi officers here are Anastasia Romanowski. If you would wave to everybody, Anastasia.
Hi.
And we've got 40 or 50 people joining in this morning. So if you want to change your settings to either gallery view, you'll see everybody, or speaker view, you'll see whoever is speaking at each time. And that might be best for hearing from each panelist. Our other Kappa Delta Pi officer this year is Christopher Murphy. Chris, thanks for waving for everybody. They're going to be leading the questions this morning as student leaders. And at the end of our hour together, they'll tell you a little bit more about Kappa Delta Pi and upcoming events that we have. I also wanted to briefly introduce our panelists for today. We have Jimmy Chango. He's nodding there. Jimmy's joining us from Kenya today. He's at Egerton University. Jimmy is one of the most wholehearted, giving people that I have the privilege of knowing in life. Our stories came together over 2 years ago now, and Jimmy is like a brother to me. So I'm so delighted that he's here to share his story and to tell you about the incredible work that he's done in the world. Jimmy is an International Literacy Association 30 under 30 recipient, which is a huge global honor of people who are really change agents at a young age. So Jimmy will tell you more about his story. Kavita Tanna is here. She's a deputy director at Inspire Citizens, and she's joining us from the UK. Kavita was a teacher in China, and she works with teachers all over the world. She's going to tell you more about her work and beliefs. And Nick Salmon was in Missoula, Montana, but he's now in the UK and joining us from London, which is just extraordinary. Nick created his own company called Collaborative Learning Network and works with schools all around the world around project-based learning, which is really, as we know, learning is all about memory making, and that's how we remember what we learn. So thank you for joining us today. I also wanted to let you know I'm going to put a few things in the chat before I turn it over to the panelists. One is that Kappa Delta Pi also has a commitment to service. And this event is free, but if you have if you have a small donation that you might be able to make toward AfriBook Society today, I'm going to put a link to a GoFundMe that we've started in the chat. Every dollar makes a huge difference, and we'll share more about that in the end. But if you would consider, if you hear and are inspired today, to consider giving to that important cause. Kappa Delta Pi has given children's books and funding in the past to AfriBook Society. So this is really a legacy for our Kappa Delta Pi chapter for us to continue. I'm also going to put in the chat AfriBook Society's annual report that Jimmy and Kavita put together that will detail more about this extraordinary organization that Jimmy has started. I also just want to give a shout out that our friend Jacob is here from Nigeria today and generously giving his time. So if you hear things to chime in, Jacob, please feel free to join in today to share your thoughts and ideas. And Melissa Campesi is also here. She's an educator in New Jersey and deeply connected to this group and this work. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to kick us off by just asking each of the panelists to share a little bit about yourselves and your story, starting with Jimmy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jimmy Chengo. I'm from Kenya. Like Katie has just mentioned, we do have a lot of stories because that is something that we share closely, the idea around stories and how stories really impact or influence or bring us to create change. Or so my story is one unique one in the sense that back in 2018, I happened to miss a class, not really miss it, but I was in campus on that day, and the, the lecturer or the don who was supposed to come to teach us didn't make it, so I was going to the library. But then on the library, I took a detour, in a way that I passed through the theater halls in the in our campus, and they had this big banner around literacy, Manhattanville College, and there was a seminar in there. So I I thought, how about if I just went in and figured out what's happening? Because actually they were serving tea on the outside, but then that wasn't the motivation though. So so I just went in, and by just going in, and I realized these were teachers, and they were all in groups. They had papers and they were tapes on the walls. They were coming up with values and all that, and I just joined in. And at that moment, I realized I belonged here. And I was the young one. I was 20, 22. I was 21, yeah, 21 at that time. And in a group of people who were around 30s and above, I was the youngest, and they were all talking about teaching and creating impact in education. And the materials that they were using were created by Katie Cunningham. And so from there is when I got the urge to really connect with who Katie was, and get to know about the whole idea around joy, because she spoke highly in the materials about joy. And so I I happened to send her an email thereafter, and I was just saying, she might never respond, or she might, but then she responded, and then from there is when we had this big friendship, and that friendship led to the idea of how I would really support the marginalized communities of Kenya. And I share the belief around stories as a way on how we can create urgency and agency, because when a person has a story, they can be able to express themselves or label their emotions, and really seek change for not only themselves but their community. So on 2019, we happened to start our first activity from a book club, because previously, before I met Katie, I was in a group in a book club that I had founded in the campus. It was called AfriBook. It was an AfriBook book club. But then we thought, yes, we had these book clubs and we were reading very well. We had the ideas around changing the world and all that, and we just didn't have the way. We didn't know how we are going to do it, and so we joined hands with the Edinburgh Award, which has a branch here in the campus. And from there is when we had our first activity in a very rural community in Kajiado, which is around 300 kilometers from where I am. It's deep in the jungle. I know you guys have heard of Masai land. So this is more like a safari. We went on a safari, and it was a 5-day safari. And there's a lot that I realized along the way, because I think the journey was everything. More than anything, the journey was like literally everything, because throughout we saw the different kind of life that we had not been seeing when we were seated in classrooms or when we were seated at home in our respective homes. We saw a society where one school in a span of 12 kilometers or 30 kilometers, and kids were going to that one school. And so there was a need for a school. And then we saw that kids were not going to school. There were these cases of FGM, early marriage, and all that. And so our 5 days, the first two days was all about research. getting to know the community. And we happened to spend so much time with the local chief and with the parents and the church leaders, because it's more of a Christian community. So having to listen to the community and getting to understand what their need was. Their need was a school. Their need was water. Their need was how they can really prevent these girls from really being married off at a young age, or getting through the act of FGM and all that. So they decided to offer a piece of land, a communal land, and we had to think quick, and we joined hands with money and everything. And but AfriBook, we came in the means of providing, sourcing the school's material and all the stationery, everything. The teachers were equipped. We equipped the teachers with books, chalks, and all that, and everything for the kids. And the last day was the most painful one, because we had to leave, and we had made a very huge relationship. I'm one guy who believes in relationship based approach than content based after. And as all of you who are educators here, I believe this is something that you should really take up, build a relationship first with your students, and then really bring in the content. Because without the relationship, the content won't go through. Well, it depends when it depends with how you want to approach it, but then this is the best way if you really want to engage with students or create engagement with students. So um, we left that place and went back to school, and we thought, we this is not a one-time thing. We want to do it on a regular. We want to help other communities. And so we continued holding hands with the Edinburgh Award for the next 1 year. We went together in activities so that we can really reduce on cost and everything. And then I shared with Katie all this progress, and she came in with the idea of the of books and the book drive in Manhattanville. And she joined me with the Kappa Delta Pi, and I met very good leaders who I'm happy that I'm connecting with some of them in quite different levels other than professional. And she was able to garner for us books, to give us books, and on those funds for us to do the next activities that we had planned. And in the past 2 years, we can say that we have managed to create 200 stories. The kids who are able to get these books that were donated from Manhattanville are able to share their own stories on how that book really built on their imagination, and how they can really share with their parents, because we realize that here in the country there's a lot of difficulties in engagement, in the sense that parents are not really engaged in their students learning. They would love to, but then it's a poor society, or it's something that parents are struggling here. They have to fend for the needs of their kids, and so they don't have so much time with the kids. And so having to get these books, we managed to get 3 pilot centers that we have held each other's hands, because we believe in relationship. And so these three pilot centers are quite diverse, in the sense that one is an orphanage home, and the other is a school, and the other one is a community. So these are just levels, in the sense that we have the 3-tier level of organization, community, and individuals. And so the impact is quite easy to gauge impact and really get to understand that you have an individual who's gaining, and then you have a community that is also prospering. And so the levels are one thing that we are lucky that we kind of really developed. And I'll just share one impact story from all this, from the levels. And this one I shared with Katie, because um, after last year, before we crossed over to January, I met this guy. He just joined high school, and I didn't recognize him, because he called me by my name, and Jimmy, Jimmy, and it was in campus. And then I was like, I don't know you. Tell me more. And he was like, you came to our school. I was in the orphanage home. And now he had made it to high school, and they came to the university for benchmarking to get to see him because he was doing agriculture. So he told me that I changed his life, and that has been something that I have been emotional about, and having to share it with Katie because uh, the books, because it's all about the books. He was telling me about the books, the books that you left with our teacher. There was this story of Wangari Maathai. I know you all of you know about her, and he told me that it changed his life, and it really gave him a sense of urgency, belonging, and a sense of how can I really create an impact in the world. And so he told me about what he's doing for his community, and I was proud of him, and I connected with him later on with the teacher who was running the school, and he told me that it's not only him. There are many other kids who made it to high school because of these books, and it's not only the books. It was the stories that because we had a summit or story summit, and we had to share our own personal stories. And so this is something that I have been really passionate and really happy about, and it's one impact that is quite close to my heart. And I'll just speak about the coronavirus period at this, and then I'll just leave it at that. And hopefully, the questions would really open up more of my stories. So, so when coronavirus started, and I was in campus because I was hoping to get done with campus in only a month, and then it came, and then campus and everything went into a frenzy. We didn't know when we were going to finish, and I happened to get connected to two of my friends, or actually four, because they came in gradually. And at first, it was Kavita Tana, who was one of our panelists, and then it came to Nick, and then Melissa, and then Jacob. I know I've messed up the order, but then all these are very good connections, and they have changed my life, and they've changed the direction at which Afrobook has to go. And they bring in a lot of ideas. And you're all aware of how this period has really exacerbated the inequalities in the society, basically in Africa, because now that schools in some nations are still grappling to whether to open or not. So here in the country, we opened about a week or two ago, but then right now the numbers are rising. And so there's this idea of really closing the schools again. So it's a bit challenging because when the schools were closed, there was a high number of teenage pregnancies. And so I got so passionate about really solving this issue. And I got help with some of my family. We call each other family. And so they told me about how I can really make change through that as a branch of Afrobook. And so my story is quite long, and I feel like your questions would really open me up and really engage me and really open up more of these beautiful stories. Um, Thank you, Katie, and I think I'll just stop at that.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. So much of what you said, I think, resonates with everybody here. So thank you so much for sharing your story. And Kavita and Nick, will you tell us a little bit about yourselves? And then Anastasia will ask a question.
Thank you. So there's so much, as you said, Katie, that resonates with all of us. But I really wanted to sort of pick up on a couple of key points. Because as Jimmy was sharing his story, I realized the power of book clubs. Because, actually that's how I was brought to Katie. Because a good mutual friend of ours, Tonya Gilchrist, was holding a book club about Katie's fabulous book, Start With Joy. And that's how I got connected with Katie, because I loved her book so much that I said to Tonya, how would it be if I totally fangirl the author And she was like, well, Katie's really lovely. You should just reach out and see what happens. And Jimmy and I have had the same experience, that Katie responded so open-heartedly and so just so generously to say, oh, of course I'd love to meet you. Of course we can talk. Of course we can connect. Of course we can build a relationship with one another. Of course, the fact that you have a mentee in Zimbabwe and, I have someone that I'm mentoring in Kenya should mean that we should introduce everyone to everyone. so, because of Katie, I've been able to create the family that Jimmy alluded to, that during this time, I very much created the family for myself, the chosen ones, and Katie and Jimmy, and we have Jacob and Melissa, and obviously Nick sitting next to me now, and Vavisi out in Zimbabwe, that we really have become the family we've chosen for ourselves. And so, again, what Jimmy was saying about relationships and connections is really real for all of us, and we just feel so blessed to be connected with one another. And thank you all for being in this room with us, in this space with us, to learn about our stories and to hear the impact that we've all had on one another's lives, because the values that they all give me an opportunity to live out every single day, of loving and learning and living, the connections that they give me to be able to reach out to my own community and their communities, and the fact that because we are in different parts of the world, it creates a global story, is everything to me. That is the meaning of life, and it's not an overstatement to say as much. It really is what makes me jump out of bed in the mornings, to know that that I have these connections with these people. And so I just really want to give a shout out again to Katie for being so open-hearted and generous with not only her time and her wisdom, but also the people in her lives, in her professional, personal, all of the different aspects of her life. I really appreciate that. Over to you, Nick.
Well, I first want to say that what Kavita didn't say about herself is that she is absolutely not just a master educator, but a master artist of being able to help people see connections and see purpose in their work, and inspire others to follow through. A question that is often shared in one way or another is, so what's next? What are you going to do about it? Kind of thing. And that's what's kind of driven much of the last 6 months of my life, is what are you going to do? Because I get to work with schools and communities all around the world, and help them kind of figure out, where are you, where you want to go? Well, then of course the next piece of that was then, okay, if there's a place to go to, how are you going to make that happen? And I feel like that is also kind of woven back into Jimmy's story as well, as he didn't stop when he just encountered this conversation about education, and in his college campus, he said, well, this is inspiring me to take action. And you heard the follow-up of that, which is connecting kids to literacy and changing their lives, and then having that joyful encounter of somebody coming back to you and saying, you changed my life. And ultimately, that's what I think we're all trying to do, is to have that kind of impact. The world needs that so deeply, and anything we can be doing to connect people to other resources, or connect people to other ways in which they can impact, is so important.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for all sharing such amazing stories. To start off with our questions, our first question is, what inspired you to venture into education? And starting with Jimmy, and then we could lead into Nick and Kavita.
It was definitely not the T on the entrance of the theater. So I have always, I received a scholarship when I was joining high school because I came from the ghetto, and right now my life is changing. And this scholarship helped me get through high school. And I remember on the essay that I was writing for my scholarship, I wrote that I really want to change lives through education. And that hit me after, because right now I'm doing design. I'm doing a bachelor's in design. So in the second year of my college degree is when I realized, I don't know, I don't want to say I went into the wrong direction, but then I took a detour. Let me just call it a detour. And I realized I really have to go back to, I have to have a come to Jesus moment. And so that is my path around education. It's not the T, but then it's something that has been with me for a very long time.
For myself, it's funny because I feel like I've been in that path of education for such a long time. So even though professionally I only sort of, qualified, if you like, it's my 10-year anniversary right now, actually, yeah. But my dad was sharing with me again the story that he shared with me about how when I was still, sort of just waddling along, just learned to walk, we'd gone out for a walk in the street, and there was a moment where, there was people walking towards us, and he kind of held my hand a little bit tighter, and I was like, Dad, we're okay, like we're just walking, we're not doing anything bad, they won't hurt us. And he always says that I taught him so much in that moment of just accepting the situation and just, like embracing it and just living in that moment of love and just being trusting and all of these kind of things. And it got me thinking about why he spoke about me in that way, because during this time there's been lots of times where I've said, I just feel like I'm different to other people, I'm just different, and I don't know what it is, why am I different? And someone else said to me, well, it's not that you're different, it's just that you just know who you want to be and how you want to show up, and that is to be the best that you can be. And for me, that's what teaching and learning and education is about, to keep yourself open to those experiences where you can ask the right questions, ask the why are things like that, and why are we doing things like that, but then knowing that the answers are out there or they're within you. And I think that's what drew me to education, that I could do that for more people, that if I can be in those classrooms with those young people and demonstrate to them that it's all within you, it's all within you, I just need to give you the right experiences, the right situation, the right places to be, and you'll get there, but everything is within you. And so my journey to education was being that kid in the classroom going, but why are we learning that, why? And then being that person that's like, okay, my nephews are struggling at school, why are they struggling at school? Oh, it's because they're not interested, they're not engaged, so let's make it fun for them and turn everything into a game. And then realizing that, oh, okay, do you know what, it's not enough for me to be making people happy through their clothes and jewelry, be making people happy through helping them buy their houses and sort out their retirement plans. Actually, I need to be more deeply involved with them. So what I'm going to do is get in with their kids and be a part of that world. So it's been all about the why the whole way through.
Yeah, well, again, I'm struck by both of your stories in that you're sharing examples of how you had early encounters with education that inspired you to ultimately take action, and that there's this delay. I think there's something about that, and I suppose my interest in education has that same kind of thing. One is I'm like 9 generations of my family have been educators since 1700 in France, and um, sorry, fronts. Um, and so in some ways, it was just the air I breathed as a kid. Was that, like, all my aunts and uncles were educators, and I didn't have business mentors or anything other than educators all around me. And I think it was my elementary school principal had become the junior high school principal, and he had two students from Guatemala who needed help with mathematics. And I was at that point maybe in 10th or 11th grade, I don't know how old. And I had been taking Spanish. So he said, well, you can come work with them and help them with math. And it really ended up being a mutual learning and teaching experience, because of course they were helping me improve my Spanish. And it's not like I had any great mastery of mathematics, but I could provide enough support for them to help them grow. And those were really great sessions. And maybe more than anything, it was that principal kind of identifying me as somebody who could thrive in that setting. And so eventually, you know, a decade later, when I was actually teaching, that kind of symbiotic relationship was really important to the work that I was able to do. And now my classes are 8 to 80-year-olds, because I help facilitate conversations about education in different communities. And depending on the age range that shows up, I have probably the most diverse multi-age classroom possible in those settings.
That's really, really fantastic. I just want to say I've been looking forward to this for a really, really long time. And that, Nick, that's actually a perfect thought to lead us into our next question. This pandemic has posed such difficult times to the entire world. And whether it be engaging with different, engaging with students in different ways, or using literacy to activate their imagination and change their lives. What has been one positive to take away from or to come out of these difficult times? And of course, in no specific order.
Or you can go, Kavita. Okay, so I think one key takeaway is for the community that I'm going to speak about, or for probably the education system in the country. I think there was a need for an overhaul in how we teach, and what we teach, and the definition of engagement. Because I believe what we've always thought about engagement here in the country is bums on the desk kind of engagement approach, where you have to have kids seated on their chairs, and also the modules of learning, or probably the curriculum that has been running in the country before the introduction, because there's a new curriculum that is being introduced, which it's kind of really on the struggling phase. And we have a tendency of introducing new curriculums in the country and then they fail. So fingers crossed about this. So the previous curriculum that I went through was kind of a time-based curriculum that that we had, it was set around a particular time, and that when that time cannot be exceeded or cannot be reduced. And so learning was kind of really either rushed or kind of really inadequate, or the kind of information you get is inadequate. And once the teacher has consumed the 2 weeks that he or she has been allocated with by the government or by the district education board, whatever he or she hasn't covered, they won't cover it. So I think that is something that the overhaul of the education system is something that we hope will, the introduced curriculum, which is called the competency-based, which is being introduced, would really shape global competencies that I think I'm just offering a segue to Kavita, because I know she understands much about the global competencies. So this is what I believe it's it's a pandemic gain in some sense. So let me just give Kavita.
Thanks, Jimmy. So, I mean, there's so many things to say about what Jimmy just shared, and I really appreciate what Chris said as well, that the power of literacy in this time of COVID-19 is, in my opinion, the way that reading especially, but engaging with text in any form, opens up our imagination, opens up our worldview in a way that is so powerful, because we can't live every experience of every person in the entire world. There's almost 8 billion of us, like I can't live every life that all of you are living. However, through listening to your stories, I can engage with you in a way that is as powerful, as meaningful, can be as deep if the two of us choose to engage in that way. And Jimmy referred there to global competencies, and I think with global competencies, there's a lot to be said of, okay, so who am I? What is my self-awareness? What are my values? What do I hold dear to myself? And then being able to extend that out in terms of being interested in the perspectives of others, and understanding what it means not only to be an active listener, but also to really get the perspectives of others. The old sort of idiom was perspective taking. I wonder what it would be like if we live in a world of perspective getting, and getting it in the sense of the literal sense of the word, embedding it in our heart, but then also getting it in the sort of colloquial slang sense of, like, I really get you. And I hold you, and I'm going to hold this space for you, and I'm really going to try and understand, really try and understand what you're saying to me. And then, as Nick referred to earlier, the classic question that's come out of this time is, so what are you going to do about it, Kavita? and I extend that question to everyone in the family and beyond, because at some point, what are we going to do about it? We can reimagine education. We can use this opportunity as a milestone, as as a time in our lives that has opened some windows, some doors, for some, broken down all barriers and all walls. But then what? Are we just going to sit and watch it all sort of come apart in front of us, or are we going to step into it and be brave and allow others to help us stay safe, to actually do something about it, and really change the way that education is perceived? What will it be like in this new world where we don't say our children are going to school, we say that they're wanting to get an education, knowing that education is a lifelong experience? And that's leading to what Nick says about these things.
Yeah, we've had this conversation a couple times about, in some ways, a challenge that we've had in education is that we describe it as ending at the age of 18, and for some people extending a bit beyond that. And the more we can be having conversations as adults learning, whether it's in this setting today, or we had a call yesterday, or Jacob's presentation yesterday, we continue to kind of be learning throughout our lives. And if we hide that away from young people, that's such a shame, because that's what can help them see that this doesn't end. It is something that you constantly remain curious about the world around you. And I guess, so for me, this COVID moment has been, it's blurred a lot of these boundaries. There could be not just 40 adults in this call, we could have 40 young people of any age in this call at the same time. And when I think of the schools and communities that I work with, some of the really wonderful things that are happening is they can now bring in water quality experts from Montana to Colombia or to Maryland or to Australia to interact with young people who have a deep concern about their own local environment, and they can now reach around the world and find those resources. And there's really no excuse not to do it. I mean, the technology has made it very simple to connect with those people, other than the time differences. And what I see is those adults out there, those experts, who are really excited about interacting with young people. They haven't been asked to do that. You know, they've lived in their little research world or whatever, and nobody ever said, hey, could you come help young people understand their environment at a deeper level? And they are inspired too. And I think that's another favorite quote of Kavita's, is to remind us that the Latin root of education is to ignite and to draw out from each of us that passion for seeing and learning about the world. I know I got the Latin wrong there. I studied Spanish, not Latin.
Thank you so much for all your answers. I feel that in kind of like the essence of the question, what are you going to do about it, which has been now extended to all of us, and I love that. This next question kind of leads into that, is what are your hopes for the future of education? And it could go into any order, whoever feels ready to speak.
I'm going to take this one first. My hope for the future really lies in people. It really, I have this eternal sense of hope around people. I've been engaged in some conversations recently where unfortunately there are some of us that don't have that hope. And you know, we'll say, but people are fundamentally selfish, and people are this, and people are that. For me, people are living systems. We're living. And in that living, we have a capacity for growth. We are constantly changing, constantly. And that sense of life and growth and capacity for change gives me hope every single day, every single day. And so my hope lies in all of you. It lies in, you know, the Jimmys of the world, the Jacobs of the world, the Melissas of the world, the Katies of the world, the Bavusis of the world, the Anastasias, and now Chris, because I've met the two of you today, and, you know, like, I've been so impressed with the way that you show up, you know, the fact that I can see Chris and Miss Franks, you know, like, that's what gives me hope for the future, because if there's enough of us in the world that fundamentally have a desire, a preference for creating the world that we live in, for creating the world that we want to live in for ourselves, then inevitably we'll be asking ourselves that question every day, right? So what is that world that I want to live in? Why do I want to live in that kind of world? And how am I going to create it? And that fundamentally is what life is about, right? Creating that sense of meaning. And then making those decisions, and consciously making those decisions in every second, every minute of every day, that who do I want to be? Why do I want to be? And how am I going to keep being this way? And so, you know, my hope for the future is that we keep spreading that word. And, you know, and I do have to give a little bit of a shout out at this point, that, you know, reaching out to people that perhaps, you know, we talk about, you know, Maslow's hierarchy and, you know, all of that kind of thing, that for some people, that is the life-giving force, even above food. You know, for some, you know, we all know that you know, access to clean water is more important than food, right? And so, you know, for some, it really is that situation where, you know, give me some books. I can eat later. I'll just eat rice. It's fine. Give me some books. And that's what, you know, that's what we've been able to do with Jimmy's, you know, AfriBook Society. We've been able to do that with Jacob's I Read to Live initiative, you know, giving people their voice when they're in a new country, like Melissa's done. You know, all of us have been trying to do that. to realize that, you know, there's some things that are more important in life, and that voice, being seen, being heard, feeling valued when we are able to share our stories is that's what ignites hope in most of us, and that's really what gives me hope for the future.
Yeah, I guess it'd be easier if I talk now and then let Jimmy go, but I'm glad you used the word hope, because I think ultimately that's what anyone who has a deep passion for teaching and learning is focused on, is providing people those opportunities that allow them to envision their future very differently, much like that story that Jimmy shared earlier in the conversation here. And that's that thing that we can't measure, that thing that ripples on and through our lives and the lives of others and throughout the universe. You know, I mean, it's sharing that is, I think Jimmy referred to earlier, you know, focus on relationships, not the content. You get to the content, but you need to form that deep bond that people feel like somebody cares about them and cares about their future. And I think that essentially all learning grows from those kinds of relationships. And I think what comes out of that is that when you know people well, then all those things you're supposed to do as an educator of providing feedback and assessment and everything, it just flows naturally out of that. It's no longer this abstract interaction, because it's obvious what that young person, what feedback they need next in order to find that next moment of growth, or you know, whatever from there. And I guess I'll hand it over to Jimmy with one quick thing, which is a book that many of us read, was called Factfulness by Hans Rosling. And he, in his work, says, in general, we all around the world, sadly more in the US than elsewhere, carry a very negative view of the future. And yet when he lays out 100 different questions, in almost every case, it's the very positive answer is the correct answer, that the world has gotten better in the last 100 years. It may not feel like it in this very moment, but there is less poverty, less hunger, better access to water, better access to healthcare around the world. And the more we can be telling that story and help people, no matter where they are in the world, deeply understand that story, I think the more we can see a gesture like what Jimmy's doing with AfriBuck to be an obvious positive step. It's not something that will have no impact. We've already heard the impact. It's those kinds of actions that are helping to build that, you know, the next 100 years are going to be remarkably better than the past 100 years as a result.
I believe like each of us kind of really have a segue to whatever we're going to say, because whatever Nick has just mentioned, I'm going to reiterate. And I like the term hope as well. And Kavita knows, because I am a fan of Emily Dickinson, and hope is a thing with feathers. So we're not going to go into that. But one thing that I want to reiterate from the two who have spoken before me is it's just the idea around empowering educators and teachers to really share their own ideas and their practices. Because I believe that educators and teachers we are really undercutting ourselves, in the sense that we don't share our success stories, even if it's on Twitter, or we are really so busy that we don't really share our own success stories. And I feel that we have so many great things that we have, so many great ideas that we have that are life-changing, or could be a hallmark to a very big invention or innovation. So my hope is on a community where these stories are valued. And once we get to value these stories, of people who are creating change in their own communities in the ways that they are doing so, we are coming up with a lot of hope for the future and hope for education. And so teachers who are here, I believe that you heard me, and don't undercut yourself. I think that you can really share your own story, because there's a lot that your story can really shape or can really help another community that has the same thing that is happening. So that is my hope. My hope is around stories. My hope is around empowerment to the teachers, empowerment to the students, empowerment to anybody that is handling a community, because learning happens not only in schools but also in communities.
Thank you, Jimmy. That is, and Kavita and Nick, thank you so much. Really, we're all just so enchanted by your words, your experiences. As a final question, Jimmy, you perfectly just led a perfect segue into the last question. For those who are just entering the field of education, or Jimmy, just as you said, want to make a change in their community, what would be some beginning advice for those individuals?
Um, from the giggles from Kavita and the team, and so I don't believe I'd give a better advice, because I'm as well in that journey of learning to be an educator. But then, having interacted with some great educators, I think one thing they have really nurtured or really brought to my eyes is the idea of relationships and really valuing each other. So as an educator, when you go to a class or when you get to communicate with your ISs and your students and your fellow teachers or anyone who's learning from you, I believe is really help understand them or listen to them, because there's a lot of sauna when you get listened to and when you get to listen to someone. So when you fall through the idea of relationship or follow the idea of relationship in a classroom or in any setting that requires a relationship approach, I believe you should really focus on really getting to really connect with your students, understand their own story, and Melissa can share that in another area. But she has a book that I believe brings in stories from kids who are learning English for the first time. And so this is something that they are creating a relationship together before they can learn a new subject or a new language. So it's all about relationship, Christopher.
I love everything that Jimmy said, and I'm so excited that that's the first thing that he spoke about. But you know, what is a relationship, right? And so the first word that came to my mind is trust, and how do we create trust between ourselves and our students? And so from that, it's like, okay, I'm a new teacher, right? And I step into a classroom and there's all these little faces looking up at me, or what happened to me when I went into a high school classroom for the first time, I was looking up at them. But it was it's one of those situations where, okay, how are we going to connect with one another, and how are we going to do that in a real way, in that authentic way? And I think that the thing that I had to do was trust my intuition. And that's really sort of what I would say is that, and I mentioned it earlier, I think, right, that it starts with yourself, that sense of self-awareness. What's important to me? What do I care about in the world? Why am I here? Why am I in this room with these students, And if you can get really clear on that, if you can have a really clear sense of your own why, that will emanate from you, or it'll be something that the students will pick up on, you know, that if you're in that room because you want to be the sage on the stage and you want to basically impart all your knowledge and wisdom to them, that will create a certain kind of relationship and setting in your classroom. However, if you're looking to be the guide on the side, the one that's going to walk with them on their learning journey, and that's your why, that will create a different kind of relationship with them. Because then what you're going to be doing is you're going to be showing up as you and just being you. And that's really what I think most humans prefer, in my experience, that, you know, you show up as you. And so if you're really excited to be there, then show that you're really excited to be there. If you're really nervous about being there, tell them, this is really nerve-wracking for me. Like, what can we do that's going to make us all feel better about this? Whatever it is that you're experiencing, you know, just trust yourself enough to go with it. Trust yourself enough to say, hey, do you know what, this is really, really cool. I know exactly why I'm here. I want to help you, you know, learn. I want to help you have some amazing experiences together with me and with each other, and, you know, all of that. So yeah, let's do this, you know, like laugh with one another. And, you know, maybe over the year you'll cry with one another. Maybe over the year there's going to be moments of frustration and pain, and hopefully most of the time there's going to be times of, you know, unadulterated joy and excitement, and, you know, just kind of like all the highs, all the lows, but you're in it together, you know. And that, I think, is what the relationship piece is about. It's trust yourself, trust them enough. And, you know, as Nick was explaining earlier, that's what a real education is about, that to evoke from within, to really allow people to express themselves fully with their emotions, tell their stories with their feelings, and then express themselves fully through all the different mediums of reading, writing, listening, speaking, and all of the things that we know to do best with math or science or social studies. You know, all of that will come. It will come. And there'll be that in student engagement. But my invitation to you is to start with trusting yourself.
That's great. Been working on a book with 2 other co-authors around teamwork and education, and I would say that, to me, the more you can think of yourself as someone who's a partner in your own learning and in the learning of your young charges, I think is important. And just to weave it back into this whole trust and relationship piece, one of the things that we've identified is that what makes a really great team is that there's a high level of trust. And if you're a very young educator or a very seasoned educator, sometimes you're just kind of thrown into a group, and sometimes those are very thoughtfully built out. But really the fast track to building trust is to start telling stories. And the moment Jimmy tells a story from the age of 14 about an impactful moment in his life, he and I have no longer known each other for 5 or 6 months. We now have expanded that connection over the last 7, 8 years. You know, same with Kavita telling me stories about her aspirations for the future, right? It's not just about what's happened in our past, but what are we excited about doing in the future, and how are we going to get there? Well, okay, well, now our relationship is extended in that direction by another 5, 10, 20 years, whatever. And that's what I think really bonds people well. I mean, you mentioned laughing and crying and things like that too. I think that those are important parts. Making food together, singing together, dancing together, going on hiking trips or whatever, you know, all of those things are what kind of bond you together as a group. And you now have those shared experiences to draw upon when things aren't going so well, and on those days that are just over the top brilliant, you have this setting where you're excited about telling the next bit of that story together. I guess I'd be remiss in not also, I hate giving advice, but I would say reading, just there's some books that we've all been reading recently. Dare to Leave by Dr. Brene Brown, The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker, the Factfulness book that I mentioned before. You know, I mean, fiction, nonfiction, education, not education, I think the more you open your eyes to the conversations going on around the world about human behavior and human potential and development and spirituality and everything, you know, all of those things just broaden your life experience. And they all come back. I guess one other thing I really want to mention, because I know we're running out of time here, is Jimmy is very modest in what he's been able to do with AfroBuck. He has taken a very small amount of money and impacted hundreds of young people in Kenya. I think that that just speaks to the power of being thoughtful about what was the most impactful way of changing lives, and it was through literacy. And what resources did they need? Well, they needed books, but they also needed mentors who could help build those skills. And you know, for very small amount of resources, it's just amplified in a tremendous way. And I think it probably comes back to that group of people that Jimmy was able to inspire around him to take action were equally driven by wanting to change the world, you know, not content with just business as usual.
And don't forget to mention Katie's book. Everyone should read something.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for being here, and thank you for your kind words throughout about our relationship and our work together. And you all are incredible human beings. I know everybody took away tremendous things from your inspiring words. I did put in the chat for everybody who joined us after we launched of the GoFundMe site that was started for AfroBook Society recently. We're at $750 so far and trying to reach the goal of 1,000. So every dollar makes a huge difference. Kappa Delta Pi has a legacy of supporting AfroBook Society, and we'd like to keep that going. I also put in the chat again the very, very impressive AfroBook annual report that Jimmy and Kavita put together. It's quite impressive. I'm going to share my screen just with contact information for if you want to follow Jimmy, Kavita, Nick on Twitter, you want to contact Anastasia, Chris, or myself about Kappa Delta Pi. But I wanted to give Anastasia and Chris an opportunity just to share about some upcoming Kappa Delta Pi events for people who are on the call who are Manhattanville students.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Cunningham, and thank you to Jimmy, Kavita, and Nick. You've all done such an amazing job with such incredible answers for our questions. In upcoming events for Kappa Delta Pi, please stay tuned for November 17th. That is a Tuesday. We are doing a Tuesday takeover on Manhattanville's Instagram. So you can watch it on Manhattanville's Instagram story. And you'll just get to follow Chris and I around. We'll do different videos. And yeah, it'll be really fun and very exciting for us. And Chris, if you have.
Sure. And just for the winter months, we're hoping for maybe November, but it's looking more for the winter months right now. We think at Kappa Delta Pi that getting a student teacher support group and, well, student teacher and beginning teacher support group would be really monumental for just building confidence for those maybe struggling student teachers that maybe that they feel that they're alone, and maybe or beginning teachers having a difficult time. Developing a community that would meet maybe once a month would be really, really something spectacular. So just keep a lookout for that.
And certainly anybody outside the Manhattanville community is welcome to join that student teaching support group. How amazing would it be if it actually became a global teacher support group? And I'm so proud of Anastasia and Chris for their innovative ideas and the grace and poise with which they show up for things. And they represent Manhattanville so very well. It's no small, piece of their lives that they choose to show up and lead this organization on campus. So thank you. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen quickly. And thanks for staying a couple extra minutes. I just wanted to lift up a quote out of the AfroBook Society annual report, that these are Jimmy's words, that we all have different inspirations, but one goal, which is why you're here today. for a better world. And I also wanted to lift up a couple of things that you might want to particularly take a closer look at in the AfriBook annual report, just around impact. And Jimmy has done a remarkable job of recognizing, particularly as an early leader in this field, that sometimes what we measure is what counts. And so he's been working really hard to determine the impact of this incredible work that he does in rural Kenya. And I just know that it's going to expand farther and greater, and the impact is going to be monumental in the future. But this is an incredible start. Just wanted to draw people's attention to that. Over 200 children have been impacted in this short time that Jimmy's been doing this work. It's 100% facilitated by young people. It started as a book club in college. So anything is possible. Also wanted to just speak to the financial component of things for a little bit, that how far donations really go, and how US dollars translate to finances in Kenya. This is how you can find Jimmy, Kavita, and Nick on Twitter. So you might want to take a quick screenshot of this or just jot it down for yourself. You can also search by their names and you'll find them, but they're more active on Twitter than I am. So they're just really trying to use this as a platform to stay connected. And Jimmy sent me an email, and that's how we became family. And Kavita sent me an email, and that's how we became family. And then Nick joined the family, and Jacob and Melissa and Anastasia and Chris, and they had the courage just to send an email, and our story have been connected since. So send them a message, stay connected. If you want to learn more about Kappa Delta Pi, I'm the faculty advisor. This is my email. Anastasia and Chris are happy to answer your questions as student leaders and about how you can get involved. And we are seeking applications for people who want to be part of our honor society. There's a new Kappa Delta Pi email address. Applications have gone out. So join our group. And I'll stop sharing my screen just to say thank you. And